What's going on, guys? It's that time of the year. It is time to count down the top 10 albums of 2021 to me. Now, disclaimer, these are my picks. They don't have to be yours. They probably aren't yours. This was an amazing year for music. I had so many incredible album listening experiences this year, but there can only be 10 for the top 10. That being said, though, I will have a list of honorable mentions to just run through real fast because there were so many good albums. I have to continue to name more than the 10 I'm going to talk a little more in depth about. If this is your first time watching the channel, welcome. Make sure you're subscribed and the bell's turned on so you don't miss out on any videos I put out. If you're a regular, welcome back. Same thing about the bell. Let's get started with two albums. I say that because one is more of a mixtape and one is an album, but more of an EP's length. It's under 30 minutes. I want to give a shout out to both of them though. The first is Pink Panthers, To Hell With It. Amazing debut tape from a emerging artist from the UK. She blew up on TikTok, which is how everyone kind of discovered some of her bigger singles from it. Then she put out a short but sweet mixtape that's unbelievable. It has hyperpop elements, a little bit of emo, a little bit of drum and bass. It's all over the place genre-wise, and it blends them flawlessly. I cannot wait to see what she does next. And then we have Saint Sinner's Silver Tears. Saint Sinner was the singer that was on Tycho's Weather album, his first album to feature vocals prominently. I loved her addition to that. I really think it made Tycho's music have another layer to it that I appreciated. I know some fans were not a huge fan of the vocals, but for me, loved it. Her solo effort is amazing. I really can't wait to see more from her as well. If you haven't heard it, it's very beautiful music, and I definitely recommend checking it out. And then 10 more, we're going to speed through them. Let's go. Wolf Alice's Blue Weekend. This is a lot of people's top album of the year, or in the top 10. For me, I love Wolf Alice. I love everything they've done. I think their first album is still their best, but ultimately there's some great UK indie rock, and this album is no exception. Paper Kites, Roses. Paper Kites have been in my top 10 before. This album features a new female vocalist in just about every single song, which adds an interesting texture very similarly to The National's I Am Easy to Find, which is one of my favorite records. Really expands their sound and a fantastic listen. Nothing Nowhere, Trauma Factory, emo-tinged rock music that has a lot of edge to it, a lot of emotion, very catchy, very fun. I'm a big fan of this guy. Lucy Dacus, Home Video. One of the three Boy Genius girls. I've always enjoyed Lucy Dacus' music, but not as much as Phoebe or Julian historically. I think that Lucy's album this year is actually better than Julian's in my opinion. I think it's an incredibly strong effort from her. Nice job, Lucy. Halsey, If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power. This was another incredible listen. It was produced by Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor, so it's basically a Nine Inch Nails record with a female vocalist. I've been getting more into Halsey stuff lately, and this album is no exception. This is maybe my favorite thing she's ever done. Turnstile, Glow On. This almost been my top 10. If you told me last year that Turnstile would be an album I absolutely loved, you would probably hear laughter from me because Turnstile historically has been a hardcore band. Hardcore is a genre I've struggled to get into, but this time, Glow On, they broke into the public consciousness because they took hardcore and they made it melodic beyond your average melodic hardcore. They incorporated Blood Orange on a couple tracks. It's very accessible and catchy while maintaining the heaviness of hardcore music. I love it. I think this is an absolute triumph, and I can't wait to see where the band goes next. Yonsi's Obsidian. Yonsi is the lead singer of Sigur Rós, and we haven't had a Sigur Rós album in a very long time. Yonsi's first solo album a decade ago, Go, was amazing, and his most recent one, Shiver, for me was a huge miss. I didn't like the clubbier aspects of it. I thought it was just okay. This album feels like almost the Sigur Rós album that we've been due. It is a dark cinematic ambient record that has that kind of sweeping orchestral element that Sigur Rós has that was missing from the last Yonsi album for me. His vocals, obviously beautiful. I think this is a really strong record, and I hope it gets a vinyl release. Tyler, the Creator, Call Me If You Get Lost. This album is amazing. Here's my thing about Tyler. I've been listening to Tyler since Bastard. I've been a fan of his music pretty consistently. The only album of his I don't really love is Wolf. But ultimately, I think he's an amazing artist, and I think his evolution as an artist is really interesting. Now, that being said, all of his albums don't have lasting power for some reason for me. I enjoy them almost front to back, especially the last three, which all are in the same kind of headspace musically. I think they all kind of operate within a similar world, with this one being the most rap heavy of his, of the trio. But for me, this was a great listen, but it just didn't have the lasting power. I just never felt compelled to listen more than the 2 or 3 times I listened to it over the course of the year. Really solid, worth a mention, but not in my top 10. And I said 10, but it's actually gonna be 9 because I talked about Pink Panthers before and I had her doubled up in my list. Oh well. The last one I'll talk about before the top 10 is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard Butterfly 3000. Now, as you guys know, I'm a big King Gizzard fan, but I have to be honest, I've leveled with you guys. I have not been a huge fan of anything they've done since Polygona Wonderland. Infest the Rat's Nest is cool. I like the thrash elements, and some of the records after were good, not great. This was kind of a great return to form for me. It's a unique sound they haven't really fully explored before. It's very psychedelic, very synthy, very poppy, experimental. I really, really liked it though. It's a great listen front to back, and I love that they did all the different variants of the covers on the vinyl with all different kinds of languages. I thought that was a really cool, nice touch. So shout out to them for coming in with a really solid release. All right, we have done it. We're at the top 10. I want you to leave a comment below with your top 10. Let me know what I'm missing out on. Let me know if you agree with any of my picks, but without further ado, let's dive in. Number 10 is Low, Hey What. Low has had a really interesting evolution as a band as well. They began as a slowcore band, doing like kind of folky music that was really slow and emotional and sad and beautiful. And now, with the past couple records, they've turned into this behemoth sound. It's this experimental pop sound that's ethereal and just heady and really different than what they started off as, and they're nailing it. The vocals are incredible. The soundscapes are just majestic. I think this album could be a great place for anybody to get into Low. I think their previous record from, I think, 2 ago, Double Negative, is another one that's just as good as this in terms of having that kind of like ethereal, all-encompassing sound. But I really love this record, and I highly recommend checking it out. Picked up the vinyl of it, and I got the red variant. I love how thick the spine is. You guys know I love a spine full of character. But yeah, this is the red variant, and it sounds quite good. I wouldn't say it's the best pressing I've ever heard, but definitely worthy of having in your collection. Number 9 is Big Red Machine. How long do you think it's gonna last? So this was a surprise for me, because Big Red Machine on paper is a band I should love. It is ultimately the collaboration between Justin Vernon of Bon Iver and Aaron Dessner of The National. So their first record they put out, it should have been like my dream record, but unfortunately it was full of a bunch of songs that were good, not great, and ultimately became forgettable. Sometimes when a lot of artists I like collaborate, when it's distilled, it's just not as good as the individual parts of that collaboration. Now, this album, the sophomore one, surprised me. First of all, they have an all-star list of features. I mean, they got Anais Mitchell of Hadestown fame, who has also done a lot of work with Justin Vernon in the past. They have Taylor Swift on 2 tracks, and I think she adds a lot of unique texture to the album. It feels almost like her elements that she put into Folklore and Evermore, especially with the Dessner collaboration. And they have Fleet Foxes as a feature for an entire song. I mean, not just the singer, not just Robin, they have Fleet Foxes as a feature. That's cool as hell. This album is a beautiful listen front to back, and I was pleasantly surprised on listen 1, and every time I've heard it since, it has only grown on me. Very ambitious, very sonically impressive, very pretty gatefold, and I gotta say, the variant of this one is super cool. I think it matches the cover quite nicely. It has this kind of like blue with like a color in color with the white and red, and I think it looks really nicely with the cover. So definitely check this out, especially if you listened to their first record and kind of lost interest and thought, this one will win you over. Number 8 is Chloe Moriondo, Blood Bunny. This is probably an album that I am not the target audience for. If I was in high school, I would 100% be eating this up and just like feeling all these feelings that this 18, 19-year-old girl is really just putting her heart out on these songs, and I can vibe with it. I actually got to see her live here in Portland, and she was phenomenal. She had this energy and this poise and this confidence. She really does feel like a young Hayley Williams. I feel like I'm watching like the next Paramore. She has an all-girl band. They're badass, and I think these songs are incredible, kind of emo, pop punk. You know, they're aggressive, they're also heartfelt, the lyrics are really relatable, especially probably if you're in that age range. But for me, it's just a very nostalgic sound that a lot of artists try to capture, and she does it just with such aplomb. So excited to see where she goes next, but this album for me was endlessly listenable, just so catchy song to song. This is the Newberry Comics variant, which I thought was one of the cooler ones. It's kind of this like red and white marbly look. Really cool, really into it. Number 7 is Kings of Convenience, Peace or Love. I was so excited for a new KOC album. As you guys probably know, they are one of my favorite groups. They are basically the modern day Simon and Garfunkel with a little bossa nova twist into a lot of their stuff. They often collaborate with Feist, another amazing musician, and this album is no exception. They have 2 songs with her, and this album doesn't necessarily reinvent the wheel, but it is like comfort food. It's more of what I love from them. It's beautiful songwriting, beautiful harmonies, melodies, very calming, great lyrics, very like introspective lyrics about where they are in their lives compared to their last album, which was a long time ago, and you know, even the ones before that. So this album was a lovely lovely treat. I wouldn't say, again, it's my favorite of their records, just because like I have a lot more experience with the ones prior, and I do think that especially the first two are definitely their strongest material, but this one was an absolutely welcome addition to the catalog. They did not miss because they don't miss. What did miss though for me, and maybe this is just my copy, was the pressing. I ended up getting the limited white variant, and for me it's a little noisy, not obtrusively so, but it has a little bit of surface noise to the point where on the quieter parts, which is most of the album, you can notice if you listen to it, and it can be a little distracting to hear little tiny ticks and pops compared to like a rock album or a metal album where it might get drowned out. So maybe that's just my pressing. I don't know. We'll see. Number 6, Jose Gonzalez, Local Valley. This is going to be a very similar segment to the KOC one because Jose, one of my favorite artists of all time, even more so than KOC. I think Jose is absolutely brilliant as a songwriter. I think there's a magical quality. That's the way I describe his music. It's magical, especially live. He has something that just provides so much heart in the way he delivers his lyrics, in the way that he utilizes the guitar. It's almost like a different instrument. It's just so beautiful. His tone is so unique to him, and Local Valley is an excellent addition to the catalog. Again, not really reinventing the wheel, but amazing listen. He's also experimenting on this album by doing some other languages, which is really cool. And, you know, I love music in other languages that I can't understand because oftentimes it's so beautiful you don't need to understand the lyrics. You just can sit there and appreciate the music for what it is. Jose nails it. I have 2 copies of this record, and you know, living up to my name, too many records, I can't find them. They're somewhere in my stacks getting ready for this record store, but I own it. It's great. If you haven't heard it, definitely give it a shot. Number 5 is Hayley Williams, Flowers for Vases. This is the second year in a row that Hayley's made my top list, top 5 actually, and that's because she has really brought the heat. So if you like Paramore, or if you don't like Paramore, which to me is kind of crazy, because I mean, whether you have nostalgia or not, they have something for everyone, whether it's the, you know, high energy, edgy pop punk of Riot era, or it's the kind of tropical emo pop of After Laughter. They really run the full spectrum, and Hayley's 2 solo records, which are companions to one another, are such amazing looks into her as a songwriter. You know, she doesn't have the full band to play off of, and although they helped her out on some songs, I'm sure, this is really just from her heart to our ears. And the first record, Petals for Armor, was a little more experimental sonically. It had a little bit of like Radiohead influence, maybe a little bit of like Robin or even Lady Gaga at times. But this record is very stripped down, mostly acoustic. It is just heartbreaking lyrics. It is like listening to her diary, and it's so personal and so special, and I love every single song on it. I think this is just a stellar record that I really hope I'll get the chance to see her tour for. She was supposed to play, and then we all know what happened, but yeah, this album is special for sure. And I will also say this pressing is phenomenal. It sounds like she is in the room with you, which are my favorite kind of pressings when it comes to like intimate performances like this, and really nice kind of pink with black smoke variant. Hayley's all about the visual aesthetic with her music too. She had a lot of cool music videos associated with these projects, and a lot of cool art. So yeah, this was an amazing, amazing listen. And number 4 is going to either have people be like, yes, or what are you talking about, Matt? I'm just going to do it because I feel strongly about it. Number 4 is Bo Burnham's Inside. Yes, I know, despite what the Grammys might say, this is a comedy album, but it's more than that. If you haven't seen Bo Burnham's Inside, if you don't know who Bo Burnham is, let's take it back a second. Bo has been doing musical comedy since he was 15 years old. I have been following him since I was 15 years old. We're basically the same age. And he has not really missed in his entire career, whether he's directing, whether he's acting, whether he's performing a stand-up special. He is always in the driver's seat and going 100 miles per hour with so much confidence. And Inside, I think, is the culmination of his entire career thus far, mixed with how we all felt during the lockdown year. He was able to put out a special full of music that is relatable, it is sad, it is funny, it is heartfelt, and it's ultimately genius. I don't use that term lightly. I mean, I call Kanye a genius. I'm looking at his poster right now. But I think Bo is also absolutely a genius, a musical genius, a comedy genius. This music is not just funny. The reason it's on my top 10 is because I listened to it all year, even when not watching the special, because musically, it's a cut above. The songs themselves are so catchy and so well done that this transcends just a comedy musical album. This is an album that I view as just a music album, and it just happens to be hilarious. I love this record and I love the special, and I think it definitely deserves a place this high on my list because of how much it affected me as a piece of art and how much I listened to it this year. So if you haven't watched it or you're resisting it because of how popular it is, just give it a shot. You'll like it. The records are coming out soon. I think I have like 3 variants pre-ordered. Number 3, speaking of geniuses, is Kanye West, Donda. And yes, some of you probably thought this would be my number 1. Some of you thought it might not even be my list at all. And that's because Donda has been a bit divisive. What I will say is this. No one does an album rollout like Kanye West, and doing 3 listening parties at giant stadiums, live streaming them, having crazy theatrics, you know, some of which I wasn't a huge fan of when it comes to certain people he was featuring, but this is about the music. This is not about his theatrics. Donda, as an album, is a triumph. I think this is his strongest record since Life of Pablo, without a doubt. I do think the only issue I can take with Donda is a little too long. And I'm not even going to talk about the deluxe Donda that came out. That, to me, is a bit of a mess. He basically screwed the track list up. He just threw random tracks in random places. He added a bunch of stuff, most of which was good. But for me, I don't really care about the part 2s, like the remixes, basically. The album itself has a couple tracks that could be cut, especially the Tell the Vision Pop Smoke song that was just like out of place for me completely. But beyond that, we have some incredible career highlights on this album. Jesus Lord is some of the best storytelling Kanye's spinning in years. Even though it's a very long song, it's amazing. And Jay Electronica with his amazing verse 2. Moon, one of the prettiest songs, probably his prettiest song since Streetlights. Cudi obviously killing it on that. You can't have Moon without the Man on the Moon. Jail is one of the most anthemic Kanye songs of all time. And we get the reuniting of The Throne. Hearing Jay-Z at that listening party, I got like chills through my entire body because Kanye and Jay-Z together is just like, that's like peanut butter and jelly. It's magic. And hearing that verse, Jay's verse, I love so much. I think there's so many interesting little like wordplay he does. Pray 5 times a day, so many felonies, so many fell on knees. I know that might be obvious to some, but when I realized that, I was like, Jay! And then at the end of it, he name drops 3 Kanye songs at the end of his verse. He says, Hell of a Life, Yikes, and On Sight, which is really, really cool. Shows that Jay's been kind of into his music all this time, even when they had a little bit of a fractured friendship. That being said, the music on this album is of such grand scope. It goes everything from Off the Grid, which is like, trap, drill, just like club music, really heavy. And then it has the most gorgeous song he's ever written, which is Come to Life. I think that's a probably top 10 Kanye song, maybe even top 5. The piano, the lyrics, the message, the emotion. This album for me is incredibly special. And like I said, it is just a little too long. And that's the only real critique I have. I never thought we'd get an album like this from Kanye ever again after Ye and Jesus is King, which were kind of short and a little disjointed and not that strong in comparison to the rest of his discography. But Donda, for me, was a triumph, and I think that there's far more good than bad. And I gotta say, Believe What I Say with that Lauryn Hill sample chopped up is just so pleasant to listen to. And Heaven and Hell is the unsung song of the album for me. It is such a banger. And I guess I can't leave the Donda segment without talking about Life of the Party, the bonus song that Drake leaked and he put on the deluxe, featuring him and Andre 3000 doing some storytelling bars. One of my favorite Andre 3000 verses of all time in 2021. Never would have thought that was the case, but it is. I hope there's a record at some point. I know he did a record for Kids See Ghosts, for Ye, for Jesus is King. This would be an ambitious record. This would be probably 3 or 4 discs. I'm sure there'll be a bootleg at the very least, but I hope Kanye gives it the full vinyl treatment. Although, what's the track order? No one knows. Number 2, Sufjan Stevens and Angelo D'Agostino, A Beginner's Mind. Sufjan is just one of those artists I've always loved, I've always talked about very passionately on this channel, and, I love pretty much his entire career. I thought that Aporia, the New Age album, was a bit of a miss. I really liked The Ascension, which I thought was a good album, but it wasn't what I wanted after the masterpiece, one of the top 5 albums of my lifetime, Carrie and Lowell, which was heartbreaking, emotional, and really passionate and beautiful. And Ascension just wasn't what I wanted. This album does feel like a spiritual successor to Carrie and Lowell, which is high praise. Him and Angelo's voices really intertwine beautifully. I love the songs that are predominantly Angelo. I love the ones that are predominantly Suf. I think that they came up with this ridiculous concept of an album that was basically coming up with songs that were loosely based on films, everything from Silence of the Lambs to Bring It On 2. But ultimately, it is just chock full of gorgeous, gorgeous tracks that it's exactly what I wanted. Sufjan to follow up Carrie and Lowell with. It's more of that, but it's also unique because it has another vocalist, it has another player adding to the sonic textures, and I think that this album is just front to back beautiful. And I really love the song Back to Oz, which is kind of like a bluesy, kind of rockier song, which is a little unique for Suf, but it's equally beautiful while it still has that up-tempo energy. This album for me was a huge win. I have the record again somewhere, just like Jose. Can't find it, but I obviously own it. Yeah, this album is gorgeous, and I would do anything for them to do a tour. So Asthmatic Kitty, if you're watching this, please make them tour. Wow, we're at number 1 already. Holy crap. And you guys are like, wait, he already talked about Kanye and Sufjan? What is it going to be his number 1? Lil Ugly Mane, Volcanic Bird Enemy, and The Voiced Concern. Lil Ugly Mane. I don't even know how to talk about this album, because when I heard this album, I didn't realize what it was going to be. He historically has been predominantly a rapper, although he is so multi-talented as a musician. He has excelled at production, of which he did on one of the Too Many Records label releases, Supersonic. He has done kind of heavier, more hardcore noise-based music. He excels at rap of all kinds. He did the Memphis style rap of Mr. Thug Isolation. He does the introspective kind of darker rap of Oblivion Access, and he's always nailed it for me. He became one of my favorite rappers with just, through those 2 albums alone. I thought they were special enough to put him in the upper echelon of my taste. And this album, I wasn't sure, it's been a while since Oblivion Access, what it was going to be, and there's no rap on it at all. And unsurprisingly, he nailed it. Unsurprisingly, he was able to come up with this sound that is nostalgic and unique and uncanny and fresh, and it's so pleasant to listen to. Honestly, the way I described it to someone was, this feels like the Neutral Milk Hotel for the current generation. Like, the way that hit people when that first came out, and it kind of expanded people's taste and was kind of like all over the place, but in a really, really well done way. It features all these lyrics that are kind of puzzling but also relatable, very personal but very applicable. And for me, the sonics of this album showcase how good of a producer he is. He could do an indie pop record that is just as impressive as his hip hop record. This album has undeniable elements of George Clanton on here, that kind of like vaporwavy pop that he does so well, that's a little bit of a throwback but also very postmodern. But then he has just so many different sounds on here that are just like unique, like it's almost like a demented beautiful carnival. And this whole album front to back is just, I'm in awe of it. The amount of genres it touches is, I couldn't even begin to describe them all. It's something you need to just take the time and listen to with no expectation. Maybe throw some headphones on and don't distract yourself, and you will be taken on a journey that is unlike any album I've heard in a very long time. The fact that it beat Kanye and Sufjan on this year, which are 2 of my all-time favorite artists, shows just how impressive this album is. And the fact that it's a genre change-up, it's even more impressive. So shout out to Lil Ugly Mane. You are a true genius as well. I put you up there with Bo and with Kanye, and I thank you for any of the music that you give us. I can't wait for hopefully more in the future, but there's so much to digest in this album that it's going to be on rotation for a long time. I'm hoping that Fashionable Death puts out the record soon, because I gotta spin it. Alright guys, that was my top 10. As I said, please leave a comment below with your thoughts on my list, with your personal list. There are a ton of great albums I know I missed this year. For example, I know I didn't have a chance to listen to Little Sims. I know I would have loved it. I have the record in my to listen to shelf. It's just trying to open a record store and working a full-time job and doing this channel, I am a little busy, to say the least. But I know there's a ton of good stuff this year I missed, so I can't wait to hear about it from you guys. Let's chat in the comments. I hope you guys had a terrific 2021, as best as it could be for what this year was. But this is my last video for the year. Next year, in a couple weeks, look forward to a lot of interesting updates about the Too Many Records store, because it's coming fast, it's coming furious. The Rock won't be there, but I will. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a comment with your thoughts, and more coming soon. Take it easy.